All right, we are good to go.
Hey, good evening, everybody. This is great. I don't know the last time we've seen this many folks in council chambers, even for a council meeting. So we're either very impressed or very frightened. So but we're really glad that so many people have come out, and we hope that you'll have questions and comments. We really want those. We have a presentation, some slides that we want to present first. But even before we do that, I think we all want to introduce ourselves. This is, for the most part, I think most of the folks that have been part of this working group that have moved this forward, at least to this point. So I think, why don't we can start down at Chris's end and just all introduce yourselves.
I'm Chris Riley. I'm a part of the Lucy Robbins Wells Library Board, as well as the Newington Art League. So I have an interest in the arts and culture of Newington here.
I'm Jim Late, and I'm president of the Newington Historical Society and Trust. And we represent the cultural aspects of history in this town. The Historical Society has the duty to preserve and disseminate the history of the culture of the town of Newington, both socially and historically.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ken Rawali, and I represent the Newington Art League.
I'm Gail Badraco on the town council, and as this group evolved, there wasn't necessarily town councilors that brought it together. It was kind of an organic thing, and it just happened to align with my interests and working with Kim and Matt and Ken. So my involvement was more as a interested and concerned resident of Newington.
Hey, Kim Rada, I'm deputy mayor, and I will echo some of what Gail just said. I didn't come into this as a counselor, which I think I was a counselor when we first started this a couple of years ago, and we'll get into the history of all of it. But I come at it from an interest as an anthropologist, as an artist, as someone who grew up in this town and is very interested in what we have and how rich and diverse we are in this community, and are there ways that we can continue and expand and celebrate who we are as a community. So this is what I came to the group with. I'll turn it over to Matt.
Cool. Hey, folks. I'm Matt Plord. I'm on the town council. But like Deputy Mayor Rada and Councilor Badraco, I came to this just as a resident who appreciates the rich and diverse culture and history and artistic development that we have in town. I've grown up my whole life in Newington. I was a very long time ago a participant in productions over at the Newington Children's Theater, and I have a big background in the arts. And so I won't say how long ago, but it was a little while ago. But I appreciate the arts and have wanted to, from this role and just as a resident for a long time, wanted to improve access to the arts and access to our history and our culture, particularly for young folks in our town. So that's why I'm here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris DeFrancesco. I serve as the president of the Newington Children's Theater Company Board of Directors. NCTC is the state's longest running nonprofit, and we are in our 62nd season. So we go back to 1963. And the last several years, since we kind of got out of the pandemic, the program has really exploded again. It's really taken off and grown an enormous popularity. And we probably, for our programs over the course of a typical year, draw tens of thousands of unique visits to Newington for people to drop off and pick up at rehearsals, and also to attend our performances, which we currently have at John Wallace Middle School. So Newington Children's Theater Company is very interested party in the future of what we do for arts and culture in the town of Newington. And I thank Deputy Mayor Rada for inviting us to come to the table for part of that.
Absolutely.
Yep. And hi, everyone. I'm Paul Dixon. I'm your town planner. And I was brought into the project, to the committee, or I should say to the working group as staff support, because also I'm very interested in arts and cultural and our community and what we can do to increase and enhance the sense of place. It's, you know, what people view as their town, what y'all, your residents view as Newington, and to help support that and to add that extra sense of place and support and possibly extra grants and funding to support the artists and cultural businesses and organizations within the town.
I think, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think there's one other person who couldn't be with us. She may come in later on. And that is Catherine Labadia, who is a resident here in Newington. She's also an anthropologist. She's an archaeologist. She does the other end of anthropology than what I do. But excuse me, she couldn't be with us tonight. She does work at the state, but she came as an interested Newington resident and has really been very helpful with information and really extremely supportive. So we were very happy to have her join us. And fortunately, it looks like she probably can't be with us tonight. So I think what we'll do is begin with the presentation. It's not going to take forever. And what I would like is that any of folks around the table, please jump in and comment, add whatever you would like to the slide presentation. And then after that, we definitely want to entertain comments and questions. And we'll try to answer them to the best of our ability. If not, we're going to write them all down and we will get back to folks with the information if we don't have it tonight. So we'll begin with the slides. First of all, people probably are scratching their heads and want to know what a cultural district is. District sounds very formal. It sounds very regulated and restricted. And as you will see as we move forward, that is definitely not the case. But what we did was actually quote from the Office of the Arts and Economic and Community Development. And this is what a cultural district is by their definition. It's an area a municipality identifies because it contains several nonprofit and for-profit cultural facilities, activities, and/or assets. And we'll talk shortly about what assets are and what that means. These are walkable, compact areas that are easy for visitors to recognize. They're centers of artistic and economic cultural activities and special places where community members congregate. And I'm sure as you're hearing this, you may already be getting some ideas and some thoughts in your mind as to what that might mean to you. And what the Office of the Arts also says, and I think it's a very important statement, is each different is unique. And because each different is unique, each cultural district does look different. And I will run down a list of the current cultural districts in the state of Connecticut, and you'll be able to see not only geographically, but just historically, culturally, and in every other way, they are all very, very different. You know, have many things in common, but also some differences. So why do we want to establish a cultural district or propose to establish and submit to the state approval to have a designation as a cultural district in the community of Newington? It's to celebrate and highlight the artistic, the cultural, and historic resources in our community. And I think that's what you heard from everyone around the table so far. It helps to improve quality of life. It encourages people to get outside or people to come to our community and get to know who we are by walking, by cycling. You can roller skate, you can skateboard, any other outdoor recreational activities that you can think of. It's to expand knowledge and the accessibility of our resources, not only for adults, but for children, for people of all ages. And if you think about who we are in Newington and what we have available to us, it really spans the age range. And you go to any event, and more often than not, you're going to see, folks with little ones. You're going to see teenagers. You're going to see younger adults. You're going to see folks even as old as I am, and as mature as I am, put it that way. It tells stories of the history of our community, our increasing diversity, and how vibrant a community it can be, and it is. It encourages new residents and visitors to come and explore our town. And it also, and this is key as well, it supports economic development in our community, which is very important, and we all think about this.
And Kim, I'd like to add to that last piece is because one of the things that we thought of as well is if you have like art displayed somewhere or, you know, music or various culture around the town, it'd be right near like the restaurants and the stores that are that make up the unique nature of our town. So a lot of people are coming through that to see the art, and then they're like, oh, well, I'm gonna stop and get something to eat in this, you know, this place, you know, that's here, or, you know, shop in this store that's, you know, that maybe they didn't hear of and everything like that. That's not the, I'll say the big box stores that, you know, we have around town as well, so. that's just-
Thanks. Good points. Good points.
Yep, and I can add to that too. So the part of the support for economic development, you know, we're talking about, it's a district and it's a state, you know, state designated. It'll have to be accepted and approved by the state through a committee going through the process. But once that district is established, it opens up opportunities and avenues for funding with the state through the Arts Council, and opens up potential for additional marketing assistance for businesses. So that when you're talking about economic development, it's not only designating this space, celebrating what we have, but it's adding those resources. Again, these aren't resources that, you know, the town is hiring someone and, you know, getting a consultant and trying to support that. These are resources at the state. And there's been push at the state to add more resources to this program. Again, there's multiple different towns, which the deputy mayor will go into, but that's a key proponent of the economic development, is the support for the businesses and the artists in the district.
I want to move on to what a cultural district does not do. And I know that these are some concerns that folks have. I would have, if I wasn't, you know, part of this, and actually questions that we asked around the table as we started to consider, wow, there's such a thing as a cultural district here in the state of Connecticut. It does not require a financial commitment from the town or from any property owners. It does not place restrictions, requirements, or any additional regulations on any property. It doesn't require property owners to provide open access to their properties. And it does not require an organizational or commission membership of property owners, of residents or businesses.
One thing,
Go ahead.
just to add to that, you know, I think we're so glad to have you here. A lot of people, I'm sure, are here because they got a nameless letter in their mail and thought, oh geez, district, that sounds like a historic district, maybe that I know in Wethersfield, or that I know in Coventry, or that I know in other parts of the state, districts that are very restrictive in terms of what you can do as a property owner. You know, you can only paint your house a certain color, you can only paint your shingles a certain color, you have to get prior approval to add additions or do this or do that. That is not what this is. What this is merely additive. It's there to celebrate what we have. It's not there to put any onus on any property owner or business owner to do something that they don't want to do to their property. It's merely there so we can showcase what we have right now. So just want to clarify that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jumping on that too, when I first got involved and heard about, you know, establishing a district through the state, it's like, I was thinking to myself, well, why? We're small, we're 13 square miles. Why do we need a district? Because we have interesting sites across our 13 miles, but the idea is by having something with boundaries, artificial boundaries, it makes more of a destination place, rather than, you know, come to the town of Newington and see this. We'll have an area, and perhaps more in the future, which is going to be walkable for people. It will be bikeable, and a destination for a day visit, a morning visit, or whatever. So it gives a little bit more definition to what we have in town. And if it's successful, it can grow beyond one district. It can grow into more. But the fact of kind of identifying and having a boundary makes it a little bit more concrete and accessible to people from Newington and actually throughout who will come and visit.
Okay, thanks. Next slide, and this just lists the current cultural districts. And again, this is it's a process, it's an application, and we can go into that in a few minutes, but you're applying to the state, and the state is the entity that provides the designation as a cultural district. So you can see 2021 is when this all began in Ridgefield. And you can really see from this list, and I hope I'll read, I don't know how well all of you can see this. Ridgefield, Bristol, New London, Torrington, Wethersfield, Manchester, Norwalk, Stonington, and 2 areas of Stonington. And also what's not on here is Cromwell. We've spoken with them, and they're in the process, much farther along than we are, but they're in the process of establishing a cultural district in Cromwell. But they also have, and I can never remember, they have another type of a district that a group of folks have put together, but it's something separate, and it's not the same as a state designated cultural district.
That's right.
Yeah. So how it all began, we'll give you a little bit of the history. About 3 years ago, small group of us met with the Newington Art League. Matter of fact, I think Ken and Pat, waving her hand in the back, spoke with one of our state representatives, Gary Turco. He invited, I think, Gail, myself, I think Councilor Mankey, who is here somewhere. I know I saw him. Thank you. Raised the hand. We met and had a conversation about the Newington Art League, what it is, what more it could be, and what the needs are. So, Ken and Pat gave us kind of the background, an organizational history, how it benefits the community and how it could benefit the community even more, and a need for space. They have been and are, I'll call you unstably housed. You're not homeless. You're unstably housed at the moment. They're couch surfing. But they needed a space where they could really settle in. And, Ken and Chris, I don't know if you want to say anything more about that from at the very beginning of this conversation that we started to have.
Yeah. So when we met with Gary and Kim and company, we started to talk about this, and at the moment, the address for the Newington Art League is my house. And it wasn't always that way. And someday I'm going to be giving a presentation on the Newington Art League and the kinds of things we do for the town. One of the big things that many of you are probably familiar with is a chalk walk. And it's a wonderful, wonderful event that we operate the chalk walk part of it during the festival that they have. We feel we could do a lot more if we had something to operate from instead of a house. So that's what the conversation started out as. And then, as Kim will go into it in a minute, and I don't know, Chris, if you have any comments, we'll talk about how it went from that discussion to something much bigger. And what I will say, because I will never forget this, is one of our first meetings that we had, Kim said, we got to think bigger. We got to think something that would be bigger for the town of Newington. What could we do? Let's just throw everything out there. What could we do? And that's kind of the direction that we're heading in today.
I think you said it perfectly, Ken. I mean, I don't think there's much more to add other than I know we've been kind of operating as well out of the senior center, but that's not ideal as well because there's not a real good place for like storage of a lot of the supplies that you have, and it's only when the senior center is available and open that we can have the meetings. So I think that's what drove a lot of that conversation as well. And so I'm hoping that as we grow as a cultural district, that encourages more possible spaces that we could potentially find for a home.
If I could just add something, the reason it started with the Newington Art League is because the town used to provide space and a location for the Newington Art League. Actually, it was, for those of you who remember the old Board of Ed building. That's now where there's the senior apartments. And so the Art League got kind of relocated, then it was given space in the town hall. And then as the new town hall, there was not space, unfortunately made to accommodate the Newington Art League. So it's the Art League has always had some minimal support from the town, which is why, Ken and Pat came to us and said, hey, we used to give us a little bit, and then as we started talking about how important it is and how, there are different ways the town can not only support the Art League, but then as Kim indicated, let's think bigger and how it can support other organizations as well. But we did start with the Art League simply because they had been supported, and then they were kind of meant to be roving among the town.
And our organization is 40 years old. We've been around for a while, so it's we're not new.
No, it's absolutely not. We did meet several times. We kind of put a pause on the meetings, and then started back up again in probably January of last year.
Yep.
And we began meeting, and this is a testament to the commitment of some of these folks. We started meeting okay, well, what's the best day to meet? What's the best time? Well, you all know, take a look at your calendars, and maybe there's one day and one block of time in the entire week. So we all ended up meeting on Friday afternoons at 5 o'clock here at the town hall. So to meet Friday at 5 o'clock.
We're not the most popular bunch here, as you
Yeah,
can see.
yeah, I have no social life, I'm just saying. But I did once we started meeting at 5 o'clock. So this is a real committed bunch, definitely. And yes, we started looking at never forgetting the kind of the foundation of all of this. The beginning was with the Newington Art League. But we wanted to start looking at the arts writ large. Think of, as broad as you could possibly imagine the arts and culture to be. And you can see, I'm sure we could put at least 10 more people up around this table that could give you even greater diversity as well. And Jim has been very quiet sitting there representing the Historical Society, but, a critical organization and entity in our community. So we started to think holistically, we started to think very broadly. And, as Ken said, let's just put it all out there on the table and see what we can come up with. It's a grassroots entity. It's a volunteer group. It's a nonpartisan group. And I didn't say bipartisan, I said nonpartisan, because nobody even discusses this, and any political affiliations or considerations are left at the door when we all get together. And I think I'm speaking for everybody around this table. We're committed to celebrating the diverse and rich artistic, cultural, and historic assets that we have in our community, and working within that capacity to support economic development and for the benefit of our community, our members, and our neighbors. So this is what we did, the first steps. We started to gather information, okay? We were introduced actually by one of the members of this working group to the idea of a state designated cultural district. So, okay, well, what is that? So we started to gather information. We met with a member of the Cromwell Arts Alliance. And again, she was able to talk us through what they had done up to that point and how they were moving forward with the hope of establishing a state approved or a state identified cultural district in Cromwell, and what that would mean, and who we might, actual names of people for us to contact at the state to gather more information. So that is what we have been doing. The Office of the Arts has various regions, almost like counties in our state. We're part of the Greater Hartford Arts Council. So each person, or I should say each entity, each community that at least begins to move forward or looking for information regarding a cultural district designation is introduced to and works with a regional service organization mentor. Ours happens to be Amanda Roy. So we have met with Amanda, we've corresponded with her. She has always been willing to answer our questions. She's provided encouragement when we kind of showed her the map and talked to her about what we had done, and she was pretty impressed at how far we had gotten and what the vision that we had of what our community is, what our assets are, and how this might unfold. So we then started looking at the criteria and requirements that the state has to submit an application for review. I'm going to the next slide. So to date, we've worked with our town manager, Jonathan Altschul, who is waving very, very subtly in the back. Our town clerk, our town planner, Paul, to develop the required documents and the materials to schedule this public meeting and to provide information and to eventually seek council approval. So we presented the opportunity to the town council and did a quite similar presentation at one of the council meetings a couple of months ago. We have, I shouldn't say we, a couple of very cool people created a cultural district map, proposed, and compiled a list of cultural assets, and which is a work in progress, and it probably will always be a work in progress. And again, as it says on the slide, these are all necessary steps in the process for this application submission. So what are our objectives? To support and cultivate the arts, to preserve our town's history, to ensure future generations benefit from the assets and the conversations that will allow them to bridge our community's past, present, and future. We want to preserve and enhance Newington's character and sense of community. We want to increase historic awareness. We want to contribute to a vibrant and creative cultural ecosystem. It will help to enhance the vibrancy and the vitality of the town center. And we, as a community, we have been and continue to be in conversations regarding the town center. It fosters collaboration with local artists, with cultural organizations, with business owners, with residents themselves to ensure that the district reflects the unique character and the needs of Newington. It promotes and supports the arts and cultural activities. It stimulates economic growth. It enhances the physical and cultural environment, not only of the district, but I would say even broader and throughout the entire community. And it fosters community engagement and collaboration among local artists, cultural organizations, businesses, and residents ourselves. So I'm going to turn this next slide over to, and the conversation to Matt and to Paul. Please jump in and talk a little bit about this whole process of mapping. And I know it's kind of hard to see, we'll make sure that this presentation is available so that folks can access it at your leisure. But if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about all this work and what continues.
Sure, I can start and Paul obviously can jump in and fill in. So when we first understood the requirements that would be necessary for us to fulfill as we move forward with this cultural district, one of the things that was most exciting to us was the ability, as Councilor Draco said, for a lot of the reasons that she mentioned, to define some boundaries for what this district could look like, and then identify from that in the reverse order, actually identify the assets and then define those boundaries. And so we looked at a few different areas. We looked at Newington Junction. It's obviously a major historic and actual historic district in our town. There are a few other areas in town too that are obviously notable for their history and their businesses and their important parts of our community. But obviously, there's no place in our town like our town center. And so naturally, we started navigating towards that area of town. And we started to really see just how much rich, diverse cultural heritage we have in and around our town center. We take a lot of it for granted just driving by. For example, we take for granted, the Newington Fire Department's old firehouse museum. That's a place you probably drive by on your way to work every single day. I know I do. And that's a beautiful part of our town's history. We've got a lot of other places as well. Obviously, our municipal center, where we are right now, is tucked in here as well. We've got beautiful parks like Mill Pond and the Robbins Green in between Main and East Robbins. And we've got the town green in the center of town in front of some gorgeous older structures. And as a part of that too, not just those public assets, but we've got a lot of gorgeous historic homes dating back as far as 1710, right in our center of town. And those are structures that are in various conditions. Most of them are in private hands. The vast majority of them are. But they're all notable and they're all important for us to recognize. A lot of them have housed some of the major families that have pushed our town forward and cultivated its history and its culture. And they're really important for us to recognize. And then on top of that too, so that's the public, those are the private historic homes. There's also a lot of businesses, obviously, in this area of town. Businesses doing great work to support the arts and support culture and become community spaces for our town. And we want to emphasize those as well. And so what you're seeing here on your screen, and Paul, if you wouldn't mind just zooming out just a hair, you see two maps here, and they're roughly the same. On the one side, you have what is a just super rudimentary Google map that we've put this kind of overlay over. You'll see those green dots. Those are all those public assets. These are things that the town, in one case, actually the state has authority over. Their parks, their municipal infrastructure, their things like the fire museum, our centennial marker for our 100th anniversary as a town is right in the center of town. We've got the Congregational Church as well, although that's a private asset, but there's all these public assets. Those are in those green markers. That red circle you see around it represents a half mile in any direction from the center of that district. And as you saw in those previous bullet points, we wanted to make sure this space was walkable. And, we know that there could be more sidewalks in this area. We know that it could be safer in this area, but generally a half mile in either direction is what the state will consider a walkable area as for the purposes of this designation. Then obviously you see in that orange, you see the outline of the district. Now, on the other side, you see a map that was created by Paul, doing great work after we sent him this kind of a data set of a bunch of assets. And these are a very tentative and preliminary, all those pinpoints you see, overview of all these various cultural assets throughout town. They're historic assets, they're cultural, things like, the Polish American Club, the Portuguese Club, they're public assets of various kinds. They're private businesses. And again, this was a preliminary, very tentative overview of these assets in town so that we could really just generate a map. But this map and these assets, this list of assets is ever changing. But you see here, even on this map, this very preliminary overview, and actually this was compiled before we actually settled on that center area of town for this district. A lot of our cultural assets are concentrated within this district, up and down Main Street and on either side of Cedar Street. And so, again, naturally, things pointed to that direction, and that's the two maps that you see in front of you.
Yep, and that's a lot of, so when you're looking at the assets, and that was the main thing of looking at it, again, that's part of the exercise is where do they exist throughout the whole town? And then where are they more concentrated? And there's a larger diversity of those businesses within the town center and the area around them. And also the cultural district not only includes, a physical business, but it's also town activities that take place in that. And we know Mill Pond Park is a jewel of the town where a lot of activity takes place. And that is part of the culture of the town. That is part of, what we have and what we can give to our residents and those who visit around us, as extravaganza that draws from far beyond the town. And this is something that highlights Newington. And that area is together is the most kind of walkable and the largest concentration of uses in one area of assets in one area. And again, that's working with those state criteria and working with them when they're going to review these. Again, this is preliminary, as it was noted. The process of going through a cultural district commission, and then that commission would be reviewing those with the state, and then the state would ultimately sign off on the district. And it's not something that, again, is set in stone. Businesses will come and go. We hope for plenty of new businesses. That's the goal, is to, support that area. Also artists and residences, people who are looking to move to Newington, who view Newington as something that we are supportive of the arts. We're supportive of those who are looking to do these ventures and, come to town, we have a place for you. That's really the core of what we're looking at, is that's why that area is at least preliminary identified as the cultural district.
I'll just add, really briefly to these assets. They weren't just compiled with a Google search, although I'm sure we could have done that too, but we went deep into our town's historical records, the prior historic inventories that our town's done, most recently back in the late 70s, early 80s. And we've gone through those and identified different assets from there. Again, another reason why that changes, because those inventories are so old. And the last thing I want to add too is the reason we have these two maps here is because we want to demonstrate that there are assets that we know can be included on a cultural district if this were to move forward. That other map, though, includes a lot of, again, private businesses, a lot of private homes. So, perhaps a lot of homeowners in here own those homes. And we want to be clear that, while those assets are preliminarily included here just for our own kind of edification to understand what we've got in this area of town, eventually, as things move forward, if we have a publicized cultural district, if you have a private home or a private business, you wouldn't be compelled to include that private home or if your private business on any map or any listing or any inventory or anything like that, that'd be 100% up to you. So.
And I would just like to add a couple of things. Is not only do we have like this rough map that's up there, but I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when you're applying for the cultural district, that you can advertise areas that are outside the cultural district, but still fit the arts and culture, because obviously trying to fit it into this little box, you're going to be like, well, what about this place? Well, what about this place? You forgot about this place. And I think that there's a place, location that you can say, hey, it's not part of the cultural district, but here's some other maybe points of interest. This is probably the best way to say it. The last thing I want to add is when we were talking about the events, like at Mill Pond Park, or even with the Waterfall Festival, other things like that. I know I had worked with Kim during one of the meetings to try to come back and forth with like a listing of events in Newington, and I think I even amazed myself of all the things that occur within our own town all year long. It seems that there was a thing. I mean, I had a list, felt like 20 or at least 20, if not more. It was a lot more. It was a lot more. All right. So I mean, it was just a lot of events. So I mean, there's a lot to that we want to get out there and advertise to other people outside of Newington.
Moving forward. So what are the next steps? One of the requirements for the submission packet is a letter of support from our mayor, from Mayor Trister. There needs to be a review and a vote by the town council of a resolution in support of the creation of a cultural district. Actually, the submission of the application in support of Newington Cultural District. There will be a public hearing because an ordinance needs to be created to create a cultural district commission. And I'll back up for just a second. One of the things that we considered was creating a 501c3, a nonprofit. But speaking with folks at the state, it's required by the state that there be a cultural district commission. And in order for the town of Newington to create a new commission, it is done by ordinance, and part of that whole process is to have a public hearing, so that will be forthcoming very soon. And then review and vote by the town council on the ordinance for creating a cultural district commission. We need to assemble the required documents and complete the submission to the state. That may take a while. We don't know exactly how long, and I think it really depends town to town and what else is in the pipeline. Await their response, and one of the final things that the state will do is gather a few folks together from on the state level, and they ask, or they require, a tour of essentially the cultural district and pointing out some of some significant assets. And we've talked a little bit about how we might be able to do that, and actually talked with folks from the state about how that might be accomplished. And it can be very creative, but it would be, you know, some folks from the town, maybe Paul, and a couple of other folks to accompany the folks from the state to do the tour. They ask questions. They want to see what's going on. For example, Matt mentioned Old Company 1, the fire museum on the corner of Garfield and Main Street. Maybe we ask the fire department to open that for the morning or the day, so that folks, that could be part of the tour, to actually go inside. And I'll just say as an aside, if some of you have never been in there, when there's an activity and they do open their doors several times a year, please go and see what's inside that little building. It is the history of the Newington Fire Department, and it's extremely well done, and a couple of old apparatus that are also there as well. So all of this happens. While all this is happening, we want to continue the conversations. We want to be able to engage with residents. We want to all be able to work together to hear what folks are saying, what businesses, what ideas or concerns or thoughts that business owners have, of property owners, of residents in the community, of folks engaged in the arts, and of folks who love the arts, who are interested in the cultural diversity and dynamism that we have here in our community. So I'm hoping that this, even though this is the first and our public informational meeting, that this doesn't have to be the one and only. And I, for one, would be very happy to continue these, because the more conversations we have, the more ideas that percolate, the better we are going to be moving this along, and anything else that relates to and would benefit our community. So anybody else have anything to say before we turn it over for questions and comments?
I might mention that we talked a little bit about the historical culture in this town, and we have a rich historical culture in this town. We date back, the first mention of the name town of Newington was something like 1714. So we have a rich history in this town, both culturally and socially. And in this district, there are two historic houses that fall in the district: the Enoch Kelsey House on Main Street and the Kellogg Eddy House on Willard Avenue. As Councilor Plord pointed out, there are other assets that aren't fall within this district, which is a defined space, such as the Dim and Young Foundation, which is certainly another cultural asset, but it doesn't fall within the district. So that
It could be adjacent. It would be
it's not adjacent. So, but it's certainly something we could emphasize, just to give an example.
Just one other thing too is, sometimes when you hear the word, culture or arts, whatever, there's more of a restrictive, prescriptive definition of what you think. Well, arts has to be, painting or singing or dancing. But this commission or the idea behind this district is we can be really creative and have a lot of latitude in what we consider to be an art and an artistic business. It could be a restaurant with, gourmet foods or whatever. It's not just, your stereotypical artist, history, culture. We're going to be able to, I think, open it up and really celebrate the diversity, engage in new endeavors, have, exhibits, whatever. But that's why we really, we're excited about this. We think an awful lot of people can get involved, even if you don't consider yourself artistic.
Chris, I don't know if you had anything to
I'd like to hear what our members of the public who made the effort to come here and hear about this tonight have to say.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think we will open it up now for questions and comments. I don't know if the mic is on, but we'll kind of do this the same way we do when we have public participation at any of our meetings. If you just come forward, give us your name and your address, and then tell us what you want us to hear. Give us your comments, your questions, your thoughts.
Can I ask one thing? And sir, please feel welcome, but if you could raise your hand if your property falls within the bounds of the cultural district. In other words, if you got a letter. Yeah, that's good. That's great. That's what we need. Perfect.
All right, people open their
Please,
mail.
come on up.
Well, most of you people I know, hi Chris.
Hi, Dave.
Okay, I know most of you. First thing I want to say, I'm president of the Newington Farm Foundation. Unfortunately, our house on Main Street, just out of the district. I know, for instance, the Kelsey house is in it. Jack Bowles gonna move back home. His house is in it. But you know what, one of the biggest things is in this town, in my opinion, is what Newington Center used to be and what this town used to be. This was a majority of farming town, a dairy farm. There was many dairy farms in this town. Since I've lived here for 77 years, I can remember what Newington Center used to be like. There's so much rich history, not just, the firehouse is one. Matter of fact, one of my great uncles was one of the first firemen, Percy Goodale. He's in, Betty Baxter's book, Standing by a Fire Truck. But Newington Center, that to me, trolley went through there. And there was so many things that were involved with that. So this is really a wonderful thing. And I hope Debbie Young also gets in the act because.
Oh, we're gonna draw a big circle, we're gonna expand that bubble around it or
I
something.
got the cultural district on it, and I looked at the map and it said we're like a historical asset, it said, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so, but as far, we're important too, but Newington Center, all the years I remember, Blake's old 5 and dime store, I've been here my whole life. I think that the history of Newington Center is one of the most important things, not just what's there today. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. Who's
Jump on
next?
up, please, folks. And if we can move this microphone, I'm happy to run around with the microphone too.
I just want to clarify, so the only real reason why we're just not making a nonprofit.
I'm so sorry. We just want to make sure folks online can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
You just want money, you really just want to get hold of the grant money from the state. So my only feedback is when you start thinking about the taxpayers, cultural area is nice and all, arts are nice and all. But $300,000 to the children's theater, and now we want to fund a home for the Arts League. If they were that good and people were that interested, it would fund itself. Or we would cough up the money. But instead, we're all eager to steal the money from the state. That's what this is all about. And I'm speaking on behalf of all the people of Connecticut. We got to stop at some point. Let these things go.
Thank you.
So I'll just say, and I should have responded to Mr. Goodale's points too. We'll do that, but, and other folks feel free to jump in, but I think this is a really important point. You know, folks, are concerned as always about how tax dollars are spent on things, particular things that they might not see a very clear, immediate benefit to. And I think this is a fundamental point. Here's the trouble. The state of Connecticut right now has not funded this program. It's a completely unfunded program. I happen to think that's not great. I happen to think that the cultural districts like this do deserve some funding to preserve history, to promote economic development, to promote tourism, things like that. But it's unfunded right now. Let's say it is funded in 2 years or 5 years or 6 years. I would rather be in line as a town to obtain some of that funding rather than have us passed over for it because we didn't have this cultural district and have it go to our friends in Wethersfield or in New London or in Ridgefield or in other places throughout the state. So, this is in a lot of ways a strategic good idea for us to be able to line ourselves up if funding does become available. And frankly, they've tried for a few years now and the funding hasn't become available. So this may all be for naught. And we're just working on creating something that we can be proud of here in town. That's a really significant part of this too. It puts something on the books for us with zero financial stake whatsoever to promote arts and culture and historic development as well. And one thing I'll also add is the Department of Economic and Community Development, even though this is an unfunded program, they do offer a ton of staff support to towns that have this designation. And what that really means is they're going to work with us to promote this area for free at zero cost to us taxpayers. They're going to work with us to promote our historic assets, to talk about all the arts businesses that we have in town. And I think that's something we should welcome because we've got a lot of people, particularly our business owners, who do a lot of great work, and we ought to be proud of them and support them, just like Chris and so many others with initiatives like this. So that's my 2 cents, but great point.
I support the arts. I support them, absolutely. But I voluntarily support them. I think the taxpayers should have that choice. I would prefer my representatives fight against this ever being funded, and that it just go away and those staff members should go away. How much are they costing the state? Just to have these people bouncing around all over having a good time. You know what I mean? It's just waste. It's more waste upon waste that needs to stop. This state is in debt. We have serious debt, and companies aren't coming here, not because we don't have cultural districts. They're not coming to this state because it's too expensive to live here, because our taxes are too high, because we waste on stupid things. Thank you.
I'll just say we check our politics at the door at this table. So if folks have concerns around the funding at the state level, then they should go chat with Representative Turco, Representative Farrar, and Senator Lesser, who I'm sure will be interested to hear those points.
I just want to make a comment too. Granted, this designation would give us recognition by the state where if there was a grant or funds available, we can put it on our application and say, hey, look what we have. Because quite frankly, in my humble opinion, I don't think as a town we've been able to really appreciate or take care of or recognize, let's say, in particular the historical assets that we have, or the cultural assets. So we're not going to be able to do it from our local budget anytime soon. So if this offers up an opportunity to ensure that some of our historical assets don't continue to deteriorate, which quite frankly I think they have, but also, I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic, but I think this can be an exciting opportunity. I really do, to do things within the town that is not going to cost money. What if we can get this done? First of all, get an awareness out there of what we have in terms of history, in terms of arts, in terms of events and celebrations, in terms of benefits. What if we can, work with the Board of Ed or whatever, and get kids to go on school trips, so that they know what we have in town. That's not going to cost really any money. What if we can have I don't know, days to celebrate, historic homes in town or business, support your, arts and culture day. I don't know, there's an awful lot of things personally I think can be done that's wouldn't cost a lot of money, but we have to get kind of an enthusiastic base and identify which assets we have and which we can kind of celebrate and promote without costing any money to the town or to the residents, or like you said, Mr. Ellis, maybe we have, volunteer or a donation, set up for whatever, I don't know. But I think this is a start to get us to recognize who we are and what we have and what we can do. It's my opinion.
And I would just like to add to that as well, is that I think what Paul was talking before is economic development, that there's a lot of marketing that comes out of this that we would get for free, that we're not paying for people to come here. And in addition to that, you get more people coming here. They're spending more money in town, more money at the restaurants, more money at the stores. And so that I think helps our situation and in our town or anything like that. And I mean, I think to me, that sounds like a good thing versus, not necessarily, taking away from anything here.
Same thing again.
Excuse me, I want to give someone else an opportunity.
Yeah,
Just-
always
just a
done
moment.
that, so-
Chris had some.
Okay, I can hold that to the end. That's
You wanna
fine.
wait? Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm Tom Dunn. I live on Wells Drive. I was on the town website leading up to this, and I know the town has a development plan for the center of town. At least I think we do. I don't know much about it, but I was kind of curious if you could address how this cultural district would change that or influence that or add to that. And I like the whole idea, I like everything I've heard here, and I appreciate everybody's efforts to this point. But how would it change how you look at that development plan, which I assume is more commercial than cultural?
I think Paul's your best resource to answer that.
That's right.
So the town center master plan is currently in process. There's actually going to be, we're kind of confirming the meeting date, but the meeting I believe is March 8th. That'll be the next charrette. So that'll actually be a morning meeting. But as far as how it impacts this, I think it's only additive. It's something where as part of this plan, we're also looking at that, again, sense of place. I know it's a very generic planning term, but we use it all the time. But it's that, what can you add to the district? I think this only helps the town center, associated with master plan and that, because there are opportunities, opportunities for public art, opportunities for gathering spaces. One thing that's come out of the process and the public input we received on the master plan is that so far, when we're talking to the business community, there's kind of a disconnect in the back of the parking lot area. We have a business owner here who's done a great job at reconnecting his property to that parking lot. But how can that be designed that has space for people, space for the businesses, and has the ability that, yes, people aren't just put on the fringes of the town center, which is very strong in that area, but also how can we utilize the area around the parking and have the businesses be able to open themselves back up to that and have better public gathering spaces. And I think having the arts as part of that and cultural is only additive to it.
Trying to be informed, I was on the state website looking at what a cultural district is. And one of the things that it appears that you have to do, at least down the road, is as part of the cultural district, have a development plan. Sounds like attached to the cultural district. Has any thought been given to that or where that's headed in the future?
You want to say that? Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
So it's a really important point. I think because this is really by happenstance, we have this town center master plan happening at the same time, that there's a lot of plans in this area, the overlays overlap, that we're going to be able to get a lot of that work done through this master plan process. You'll notice, for example, on that overlay of the district, the Hartford House healthcare property is there. There's nothing there to a large extent right now, but there could be art galleries there. There could be art space there. There could be parks there. There could be other public space there of some kind. So it's kind of that kind of work, that kind of investigation of that area is being done with the town center master plan. So I think we're in a really good position to demonstrate that we've done that work to the state through this master plan process.
And I think the panel could also expand upon it too, but I think when they're talking about a development plan, it's not a development plan as you would think of a conventional development plan. It's not saying we're going to put a building here, we're going to put a road here, we're going to put a sidewalk, we're going to do that. It's more of a development plan for the district. It's all about that support for it. So as part of the the commission for that is to look at it. Okay, what are you going to do to support these type of businesses? What are you going to do for events, programming? That's part of the development plan. It's more so, it's not a physical build a building here, do that, but what are you going to do to support what's happening within the district? I think that would be the better way to view what they view as a development plan. I don't know if anyone would like to add, but.
I'll add, as an example, one of the things that we've already talked about, and this will be up to the commission if it's formed, but to make these kinds of recommendations to the council or to the zoning commission or whomever else, we've talked about, hey, we've got a lot of folks doing great artwork and having great art businesses from their homes, home pottery studios or things like that. Those exist in town. I don't know if they exist in the district, but they could. And how can we incentivize businesses like that, knowing that this is our town's cultural and artistic district? How can we incentivize that kind of work? We've got a lot of historic homes too. Many of them aren't listed on the National Registry of Historic Places. How can we incentivize placement on that registry too, which comes with a ton of paperwork, but a really nice, shiny $20 little plaque for the front of your door. So, there's some cool things that the commission will consider and will have to, recommend in terms of how we support that development.
Yep.
It's a great
So we
question.
do have some people online. No one has their hand raised right now, but if you'd like to provide a comment, just let me know too. I'll actually monitor and do back and forth
Okay.
like we typically do.
Do you need another set of hands to run the mic? I can do that.
We can if you're like.
Okay. Thanks, AJ.
Hi, I live on Northwood and I just have a question.
Yeah.
You say that it's not gonna put any restrictions in, but my question is, once the cultural district gets in and you have all these historical houses, I just don't want it to be changed to a historical district and then we have the restrictions, put on us. And I just want to know I don't know how it would go about, if it even would, but I just want to know what the ramifications would be.
That's a
One-
great question.
I can start maybe with some answers. That was one of the things that we wanted to make very clear and that we were concerned about as a group, that there were no restrictions, because I know there were some, and I don't know if it's the federal registry, but there are some registries of historic sites, and Jim, you probably know this much better than any of us, where there are certain restrictions placed on an individual property, even though you own it. It can't be painted purple. It's got to have this. It's got to have a certain type of, and there are no restrictions at all in terms of what the cultural district would require. And also no, how can I put this? There's no requirement that if you live within, say, this defined area, whatever it will be, and have an historic home, that it's not a requirement that you participate in anything. There may be down the road, and some of us have also been looking into historic preservation for the town as well. Down the road, there may actually be benefits for folks who own historic properties. But in terms of a cultural district, there's no expectation that someone would have to open up their house or their property, that you do what you want to do. You engage in any way, shape, or form that you would like or not. It's very flexible and it is not restrictive in any way. I lived up in Willimantic for many years, and we have in the hill section of town, right near Eastern Connecticut State University, there are many, many historic homes, probably the largest concentration of Victorian homes.
I know that area very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every year, well, I don't know if they've been doing it lately, but up until COVID, there were Victorian home days. And that was an entire weekend. And people would open up their homes. Some people would dress in period costume. Some people did, some people didn't. we're so far away from anything like that occurring now. And also some of the, again, restrictions that might be placed on some historic properties because of certain designations. But that's something that we were very clear on, and we've all, I think, really made it clear that this is not something that we want to see occurring in our community.
Okay, so just so I understand it then, what you're saying is it's strictly going to be cultural, and in the future, it's not going to be changed to historical? Is that correct?
So what I can add to it is, so for a historic district, again, it's like, again, the process we're here for tonight as part of outreach and discussing, historic districts actually have even a stricter, because it does real property repercussions. There's questions that happen with that. That is a totally different process under the Connecticut general statutes. So it's not something that you could just switch it in the night and say, okay, it's a cultural district, now it's a historic district. There's actually a very specific process. There needs to be consent of the homeowners. There's a process for that. This is not that. And it's not something that would be easily just switched over from one thing to another. It would be an entire new process, a different commission, and that would have to be required to be put in there by, state would have to approve it. So yes, they are very different things. This, I would say, celebrates that. A historic district regulates it.
And one thing I do want to add, and you'll be hearing more about this in the next several weeks. Because the need to create a commission in the town, it would be the Cultural District Commission. That would specifically be its purview. It would not be, we're going to expand now into historical preservation or anything. This is what that commission would be charged with. I hope that answers, allays some of the fears, and I get it. Yeah.
I think Jim meant.
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Just want to bring out one point. There's a National Historic Register of houses and buildings and places, and there's a state historical register. In order to go on to one of those registries, the owner of the building or the property has to apply for that. It's not a blanket sort of a designation. Individuals have to apply. It's a very lengthy and complicated process, and not every house that applies, for instance, would be accepted. That partly answers your question.
And I think you might also be, I know I was surprised several years ago to find that Newington actually has 3 historic districts in the Newington Junction area. And
North, south, and west.
that was what, in the 1970s or whatever it's
Right,
designated. And so these homes, some of these homes are on the National Historic, whatever, but the town never did anything further with it, which, I mean, when I first found out about it, I was kind of appalled when they were talking about different options for, let's say, Newington Junction development. And I'm there and I found out that, oh my God, these are historic homes, they're on the national, whatever. And I thought that, well, you can't knock it down, you can't do this because, they're valuable, they're part of our culture, part of our history. But to find out that we never went beyond getting the designation, it didn't go that step further to ensure that there's character preservation as well as just the designation as historic, the whole character of the neighborhood. And Newington never went any farther. At that point, I think maybe they should have, because there's some beautiful homes in that part of town, but we didn't. So, and to this day, there still is not any restriction, even though we have 3 historic districts. There's no restrictions.
Yep, so I do have one comment online, and then we can get back to the room. Jose, I've asked you to, you can talk. Oops, sorry, I clicked twice, so I'm gonna ask you again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, the conversation has been interesting. I've been on since 6:30. I'm located over in the Schoolhouse Road area on the other side of Robbins. In listening, I think for me, as I was listening, one piece that I had hoped to hear more about, and part of this is because I do work in this area, both locally, at the state level and nationally, particularly working with the Connecticut Office of the Arts in Connecticut, along with other nonprofit organizations, is the economic impact. And I know that was a question that a couple folks on the call raised. Americans for the Arts, which does analyses with Connecticut State Office of the Arts, along with state offices of the arts all across the country, actually has a formula for measuring economic impact per person and what that looks like for different cultural districts at large. So the number that you can think of as a per person sort of revenue that is created per person that shows up to an event is $38.46 as of their most recent survey that came out in either 2023 or 2024. I can't remember which one, but you can find it online. It's called the A6 document, and that's Americans for the Arts that has that. And then the other thing is thinking broadly about those arts and culture, right? The Connecticut Office of the Arts, as well as AFTA, which supports the creation in general of artistic districts and celebrates those, looks at that as not just cultural heritage and festivals and events, but right, we're also talking about libraries, we're talking about individual arts venues, but also everything from craft beverages to culinary arts to performing arts to advertising, right? I think of the advertising firm that's right there, right on Garfield, design and graphic products, architecture, all of that is included as part of arts and culture in this broader definition for what a cultural district means at sort of the state view and how they would view creative economy. So I think that might help for some folks who are a little confused in grounding, right, that there is a real dollar impact, just shy of $40 per person in sort of economic impact that's generated for the town of Newington. And then that we're not just sort of thinking of the more nebulous arts and culture things, but also, right, actual products, actual revenue producing businesses that aren't just the standard, right, things that you think of with art and culture like paint and dance and things of that nature, but we're talking craft beverages, we're talking restaurants, we're talking architecture, we're talking advertising, right? It's a lot broader than sort of the narrower scope that most people imagine.
I just, this is Kim. I just want to thank you for explaining this. When we talked very early on about thinking in the broadest terms of arts and culture, you know, art writ large, this is exactly what we were saying, what we were thinking. Probably haven't been able to articulate it as well as you did. So thank you so much. And you can join us anytime.
I think we have a comment in the room.
Yeah. All you.
Hi, I'm Rose Frank. I live one house over from Mill Pond. I am the neighbor to the tennis courts. When I got this letter, I was a little concerned because my house is all the way around and the park goes around. And so when I look at this cultural diversity, which is great, I just am worried about my house and becoming an eminent domain to the town. So is that what's going to actually come down to the pike? Is that some of these properties that are on this map are going to become eminent domain?
The answer is
No.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, not now, not ever. I live very close to the cultural district. I'm moving. My folks live very close to the cultural district. I don't want their house taken. I don't want my childhood home taken. I think Kim lives in the cultural district. We've got other folks up here who live in the cultural district. Nobody's home is under threat by this initiative. Nobody's home is, you're not abandoning or relinquishing any of your property rights as a property owner. Like I said, even something as small as just putting your property, even if you live in a historic home, on that list on a website of cultural assets, that's totally up to you. You have complete and exclusive right to take your name off of that, your home off of that at any time. and it's not even on there yet. So, there's no threat to your property rights. We want to preserve property rights. This doesn't threaten that whatsoever. It will never threaten that whatsoever, so long as we're a part of it and far beyond.
Hi, Jeff Rodriguez, 1307 Main Street. Live in the Cultural District. I was wondering if you talked to any of the other districts. You gave a list of 8 or 9. If you can give any examples of the benefits that they've seen since they formed the district, or the types of grants, money, things that would be available with this.
Great question. Yeah, I'm happy to start with it. I know, Kim, you've spoken with folks too, but as we said, we've chatted with the folks over in Cromwell who are in the process of applying and who have had a very long process of applying. So they're very familiar with the process and what's available to them, what will be available to them should they move forward. So they've talked about the opportunity to, like we have mentioned, strengthen and create new arts businesses within their cultural district. So inviting artists in to take up residency or to move into vacant spaces and hold art galleries there and things like that. So they've talked about that. That's something that they've seen as a real tangible incentive to go about doing this process. I've also chatted with folks over in Wethersfield who obviously have had a really robust historic district and historic Wethersfield far before this cultural district thing even took off and far before they received the designation. But even then, with all the great funding they've received for that historic district, they've said, hey, this cultural district thing, this has brought new eyes to our center of town, to our historic Wethersfield Center. It's given us a lot of great staff support from as I mentioned, the Department of Economic and Community Development to create promotional materials, to improve tourism in the area. And it's given them, a lot of a real bank of information that they can pull from to actually connect their district to others throughout the state, other historic spaces and other cultural spaces in New London and in others. There's been some really cool partnerships they've been able to do. So right now, as we mentioned, the program's currently unfunded. That might change, but there are a lot of reasons and incentives for us to move forward with this, even if there is no funding that comes down the pike, because it gives us a lot of support and a lot of spotlight from the state of Connecticut.
I think one thing that's important to understand about this is the 8 or 9 examples that Deputy Mayor Rada had put up. If you notice, they all have years attached to them. There's nothing more than like 2 or 3 years old. And the real benefit of this is really going to be realized much more than 2 or 3 years out from when it's established. So I would say in a lot of ways, there isn't the data to present demonstrable results yet, I would say, in most cases, right?
Very young. They're very young.
One thing, speaking to that, what I would love to see is at some point, and now we have 8, 9 cultural districts, come together and have a conversation, speaking to just some of these questions that, the question that you asked and some of these other questions that folks had, so that we can get a sense of, okay, it's only been, 2021 was the first designation. So it's only been 3 years now, going on 4 years, but to hear what people have to say and what the benefits have been, what there might be gaps, there might be stumbling blocks, because it's always a learning experience and it's always a process. But I think that's something, and if the state hasn't thought about that, then maybe it's something that some of us need to request and have a conversation about. But thank you.
Hi, Jeff Selleck, Wells Drive North. I am in the proposed district. I just want to go back to what Mr. Ellis had raised, his, fairly valid concerns about taxpayers funding this particular project, but also the willingness to give to the arts and cultures privately. I believe early in the conversation, you mentioned a 501(c)(3) was proposed. Is that still on the table? Could it possibly be a hybrid where we could donate privately So things that the commission could not do, a privately established 501(c)(3) could do. So you would have a hybrid solution to support your district.
One thing, something like this, I think is what's been occurring in Cromwell.
That's right.
That as far as the state designation as a cultural district, the requirement is that there has to be a municipal board or commission that was established, which is why when we initially thought 501(c)(3) would be a great way to go for a whole variety of reasons, we were told, well, yeah, it sounds good, but no, if you want this, want to go for this designation. That said, I think what in Cromwell's situation, they have a 501(c)(3) that is kind of adjacent, and I don't mean that as a pun, but to the cultural district that they're moving forward with. So there is a possibility, and we've had conversations with folks in Cromwell. We could certainly have more, and also consider this, that there could be some type of some benefit to having a 501(c)(3) as well. That would, again, take work. Some of us know what the process is, and sometimes it takes longer, sometimes it's not quite so long, but that's a whole additional process, and could be something that could be discussed. As far as my feeling is that everything is on the table. And that's the whole point of having one of these conversations now, and hopefully continue, so that some of these ideas can percolate. But Jeff, thank you very much. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
I think this gentleman.
My name is Dennis Morgan, and I have had the privilege to live in a space at 944 Main Street in a house that was built in 1723 by Jonathan Wapples. He used to own half of Mills Farm. And I sleep in a room that undoubtedly was occupied by two Irish indentured servants during the War of 1812. Having been there for some 10 years now, I've kind of looked into the history of Newington, which is kind of my adopted home. I've been here for about 10, 12 years. And I was, aside from the fact that the American Radio Relay League is the epicenter of amateur radio for the world, there are some other facts, such as the minister of the Congregational Church right there in the center of town. He was recruited in the 1700s to lead Yale University. Newington Children's Hospital, which is now part of the Hartford Hospital complex, that was in its heyday a nationally renowned center of medical care. So there's a lot to be proud of in this town. And I'm proud of the fact that the town has civic pride valued at least as much as the price of eggs. Having said that, I have one request, and that is, that new car wash on Finn Road? So could we have that designated as an art installation, and I might feel better about it when I pass it to the grocery store to buy eggs or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment? First, can I just go back to Mr. Zellick's question, and maybe Jonathan or Paul, I was just looking at the proposed ordinance for the commission, and there's something in here. It says, upon the approval of the town manager, the Newington Cultural District Commission may also apply for or solicit and accept any grants, contributions, gifts, bequests, devise, or any other donations from any source, provided that all requirements of the Newington Town Charter are followed for purposes of accepting an appropriate said funding. So does that mean that we can, pertaining to Mr. Zellick's questions, do some kind of
I think Mr. Zellick, I'm Jonathan Altra, I'm the town manager. I think both Councilwoman Bedrejko and Mr. Zellick both raised interesting points. Councilor Bedrejko is correct that, the way that the draft ordinance is written, that the commission could apply for grants. But as far as if a private individual wants to give to the town, for example, like you normally, obviously, up to a certain threshold, you can deduct your taxes, but just a charitable contribution to the town is not tax deductible. So to the extent to which you want to efficiently, from a tax standpoint, contribute to the cause of arts and culture within Newington, having a 501c3 would be, something I think that would make sense for the commission to explore over the medium term. It does, setting up a 501c3 does require a level of a small financial investment, as far as incorporation paperwork, things like setting up a way of accepting donations. I mean, it requires a little bit of cost to get that set up, but it's certainly not, impossible to do. So yeah, I think a belt and suspenders approach, I mean, and again, I'm just a town manager, just a humble public servant, but I think the belt and suspenders approach is something that probably everybody wanted to explore in the long term.
I do have one more hand raised online.
Okay.
It's just labeled as iPad, but you should be able to speak.
Hi, everyone. It's Leslie Civitello. I am the Executive Director of the Newington Chamber, and I wanted to speak on the behalf of the economic development portion of the issue. So, with that being said, I think that any cultural establishment in the town would attract businesses and attract people to come to the town of Newington. With a art and cultural district, it would elevate Newington Center above our neighbors to visit. Once you get there, you can see what's going on. You can go to the restaurants. You can go to the bike shop. You can go to the retail places, and you can really see what Newington has to offer.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank-
much,
thank you,
Leslie.
Thank you very
for all
much.
the work that you do.
We'll go back to the room and then I'll have one more online.
Okay, we have,
Hi, sir.
Okay, I'm Sally Larkins. I live on Main Street. Got one of the letters. I'm just not sure I understand why the district is spread out so far from the center of town. I mean, where I am, which is near the firehouse, Company One, and further down towards Robbins, there's just not a lot of, there's a lot of private residences. There's some old houses, but they've all been converted to multifamily, so they're not really historic anymore by the strict sense of the word, because they've all been changed. So I don't see what the benefit is expanding it so far down. I'm not understanding that part of it still. If you could just clear that up.
Absolutely. It's a great question.
Inclusive.
It's a really good question. I'm sorry, ma'am, what was your name one more time?
Sally.
Sally. Thank you, Sally.
Yeah.
So, first of all, the boundaries, as we talked about, they're subject to change, right? We preliminarily kind of made this happen. We're going to hand this over to a commission who, may include some of us, may include some new folks, and they may have new ideas about what this could look like. And that's great too, in terms of the boundaries. The reason preliminarily why this extends so far down and up Main Street is really for two reasons. There are very specific historic sites or other sites of interest that we wanted to include. For example, all the way down Main Street past East Robbins, you've got the Kelsey House. We want to make sure that that's included. You've got Badger Field over there. You've got the Robbins Green. Those are areas that we want to make sure are included because they're an important part of our culture and our history. And the other reason is because we saw in this preliminary review that we had so many historic homes up and down this area that, you're right, may look vastly different inside, have beautiful stainless steel appliances and the whole thing, but they're still historic homes, and they were still built in, anywhere from 1710 to 1915. And they have historic value, whether architecturally or because of who lived in them. And we wanted to value that. So like Chris said, it was really so that we could be as inclusive as possible and kind of grab as much of that culture and as much as that history all at once. But again, the boundaries might change when we hand it over to a commission who may say, hey, we want to make this a little more concentrated and more walkable, and they'll make that decision. And obviously we'll all be a part of that too. So it's a great question though.
All right, I'll go to the next person online. I believe it may be Rose 070.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. Wanted to let you know I'm watching, or listening rather, and I'm very pleased to see the back and forth that's gone on tonight, because last night I received a phone call from someone asking if I had heard anything about this cultural district and that there was talk of homes being taken by eminent domain, and I'm glad that rumors like that have been dispelled tonight, and I think it's been very informational and informative for the people that are there, as well as myself, as to what the actual plan is. Quite honestly, I think that more of these informational meetings should be held with the town residents, and it might make things a little bit easier here in town and not so much angst amongst the residents when new things are proposed in front of the town council. So I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Kim Yulako. I live at 169 Cedar, so I'm right within the district. And first of all, thank you all for all the time you've put in to do this. I mean, it's greatly appreciated. Change and growth is definitely needed. But I think my concern is I live in Newington because of its small town feel. I don't want to see that change. And that is my biggest fear. You said we're 13 square miles? We're not getting any bigger, so we got to stop moving too many people in, because it's becoming too much like a city. So if this can be done where people kind of come and go, but don't alter the fact that we live in Newington and we have a small town and we're each other's neighbors and friends, then it's great. But if it's going to alter that, then I don't know. I don't think it's a good thing.
Can I?
Yeah.
No, I agree 110%. And actually I'm hoping that this is going to give us a better appreciation of what we have and what we had, because I'm concerned about the number of apartments, new wave, architecture, whatever, going in town. I'm in Newington because I want to stay in a suburb with character that we moved to. And I don't think Mr. Goodale is here anymore, but when he was talking about the town center, I don't want a multi-story town center. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm hoping something like this will engage residents to want to protect and preserve and build upon what we have in terms of any kind of new development, whatever. Thinking about the character, thinking about, the smaller businesses that can come into town. And the only new people I want to see coming into town for this is people from out of town who are going to come in, appreciate what we have, spend their money, and then go back. So, I'm hoping that this will help preserve what we have rather than destroy it. And I'll do my best to see, if I'm on the commission, whatever.
And Kim, I think it's so important because frankly, I don't want to make too much conjecture, but I think the reason this has had so much legs and so we put so much work into it to this point is in part a response to, even like subconsciously, people who love this town, have grown up here in some cases, who have many years in town and who are seeing it change really, really quickly. And who embrace a lot of that change, but are also concerned that it's leaving behind some of that that small town feel, some of that character. And we've seen this process as a way to preserve that and remind our town, hey, you know, we don't need to change so much. We've got some good things going here. We want to make sure you know about them. So, you know, this is, I think, in response to some of that angst that we all feel right now.
Good. Someone else, anybody that would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Peter. I am a property owner on Main Street in the Central District. It's a commercial building, and I just wanted to say that I think this is a great idea. I think anything culturally and artsy would help elevate our town to another level, and attract people and artisans who are not familiar with our town, people that want to learn about historic places. I grew up in town here. My family moved here in 1967. I live in the south end of town, and I graduated through the Newington school system in 1980, then went on to college, and I ran a floral business in town for 40 years. And my thought is anything that's going to bring new people or some more people into town to see our historic downtown area or other historic sites in this town will only be a positive thing. And whether it's federally funded or state funded, or if it's privately funded, if any of those things come through for the art and culture district, I think that would be a bonus. So I'm all for this. I think this is a great idea, and I'm glad that you guys took the effort and the initiative to start this. So I'm glad I was here to see this. Thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
was saddened when your
was just
flooring
gonna
shop closed, because that is something that I would consider as
part of- yeah.
part of the
Part
arts,
of it.
whatever. And, you know, you really did serve a niche, and I actually came in and got some good stuff when you were going out of business. That we're using it at St. Mary Church, by the way. But yeah, we do miss your business in town. But thank you for your prior contributions.
Yeah, thank you, really, sincerely.
I thought I saw another hand up, someone else that wanted to speak.
Can I just make another comment?
Sure.
Based off of Rose's comments and also the woman who was worried about eminent domain. I want to tell you right now, if I'm on the commission or even a member of the council or whatever, and somebody comes to get your house for eminent domain, I will sit with you on your front porch.
We'll chain ourselves to your.
Because that is not, I mean,
No.
I didn't even think that would come up in people's mind, but you know, of course it would. And I will, seriously, I will lay myself down in front of the bulldozers if that ever happened.
And this is a commission that wouldn't have the power to initiate eminent domain anyway. That's not even what the idea behind this is.
Other questions or comments?
Chris is good.
Chris?
If no one else has anything, I just wanted to make a couple of points. There has been an assertion that the point of this commission is to steal state money from taxpayers. And I just want to make clear that putting Newington in position to be eligible for grants from the Department of Economic and Community Development is one aspect of the objective here, but it is far from the only aspect. And I would argue it's not even close to the largest and most significant aspect of it. And I mean, we can all have philosophical differences on how we view how the state is being run and what the state is allocating its resources for. And if you want to really get down and look at it that way, the state is run how it's being run at the present time. Programs are what they are. The commissions are what they are. And towns are going to apply for state funding for things. So if Newington doesn't put itself in a position to get some of that funding, then some other town is going to. And if that happens, that's fine. But that could potentially cost Newington a chance to make certain things happen under the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish from a cultural standpoint, because that resource would no longer be available to us. And that's fine too. Was it I believe his name is Mr. Ellis, who had said something about voluntarily supporting the arts. And I think that's a great and very important and valid point. And that's part of what you're looking at here. I mean, all of the The biggest expense or resource that's going to be allocated for this commission and this district designation is going to be the manpower of the volunteers before you and other people who are going to be part of this commission. And the objective, to me, larger than the trying to get state money, is just the reputation of making Newington a community that becomes known beyond the district and beyond the town as a place that the arts are welcome and the place where culture and arts and history can thrive. Then we just cultivate an environment where that can only grow and be nurtured. And in doing so, there's an element of cross promotion, whether you're physically in the district or not. If you're a business, if you're some kind of cultural or arts or some kind of entity, you can form an alliance with the others in the district and you can cross promote each other. And I mean, an example I've been given at these meetings is, let's say the Newington Art League ends up getting a home and in the center of town or somewhere, and there could be other for-profit, any kind of enterprise, any kind of business in town could, in theory, want to be associated with or aligned with the vision of the cultural district. Well, maybe they put one of the Newington Art League's pieces up in its lobby or in its storefront, and people can enjoy it just walking down the street. And then they're like, oh, what's that? And then there's some information there that spreads awareness and raises awareness by the Newington Art League. And now the Newington Art League's audience becomes that person's customer and vice versa. Maybe they put up a poster that says the Newington Children's Theater is doing Moana Junior at the end of March and early April. And now my audience becomes your customer. And these different entities can work together within this district and collectively help each other. And create essentially like marketing alliances. And that's above and beyond the marketing that Chris and others on this panel mentioned about the resources that the state would make available to us, even if not a penny comes from the state ever from having this designation, but we have the resources and the state behind us to help us with the marketing and promotion. And it makes Newington be more of a destination than it would otherwise be if we don't even try. So if you leave here with one thing tonight, I hope it's that this isn't some kind of effort to steal money from the state or steal money from the taxpayers indirectly because it's coming from the state instead of directly from the town or anything like that. That's not the case at all. It's much, much bigger than that. And it's more about, again, raising the reputation.
Does anybody around the table have any final comments?
I was just going to bring up the fact that I think years and years ago, I had written a letter to the Economic Commission in town, Development Commission, to say how much I love Newington's unique character. We have the big box stores, yes, we do, around town, but we have a lot of the small individual business owners and everything like that. A lot of them I even call friends that I talk to on a regular basis, and it's that unique character that I think really we want to get promoted and everything like that, because that really makes our town, I'll say, different than a lot of other towns that are just starting to just get overwhelmed by their business development. So that's.
Yes, sure.
And I'm not sure if it would be you people or if it would be the the new town planning that they're having for the district. But there seems to be like Keeney Manufacturing, some places in Lowry Place that is having a hard time attracting. Do you have like any ideas or plans on how to make the center, that part of the center, more vibrant?
I think, probably each of us has a list. A mile, yeah, starting with a supermarket. But I think that might be better answered in relation to the town center.
Okay.
Plan, and I don't know, Paul or
Yep. And I just said,
Jonathan, if either one of you would like to speak to that?
yep, so I can add the process of the town center plan, and again, we're in the middle of that right now, and I have to plug too, March 8th, that'll be the charrette. And, you know, a lot of the input we received, a lot of the public input about what people would like to see there, combined with, as part of it, we have, Camoin is the economic development specialist, a planning firm who is working with Colliers, who will look for those opportunities within the center. Go through the process of the charrette, thinking about the concept of how connectivity, how things could be developed out, and then you kind of ground truth that and to see what could feasibly be built. So that we're going through that process right now, and it's a lot of, you know, I think everyone has ideas of what they would like to see down there, and that's also what we want to hear. What I especially want to hear was part of the study too, is what are your ideas, and then it's bringing it to fruition. That's the most difficult part. Is, you know, where you're ideally working with is private development dollars. It's not the town who's saying, you know, we're going to put this here and we have these funds and we're starting a business. It's making sure that the regulatory environment and making sure that the feasibility of what the town wants to see and what's viable, we make sure that the barriers of entry are kind of removed, that the town has looked at this and said, these are uses we want, these are ideas that we want, and signals to the business community that this is what the town is looking for. That's at least the regulatory way to get to that. The other one is, you know, people voting with their wallets and going to businesses and then speaking out saying, this is what I want to see there. Because there's, again, it's that private investment, of course, because as we know, towns don't open businesses. It's the private equity that opens businesses, and private owners, whether it's small, we have a lot of small businesses in the town, and that's actually what makes this town center very different from others, and actually a unique opportunity for it compared to, you know, a lot of people through the process talk about, you know, Blueback Square. We don't want to be back Blueback Square, but we want some of the vibrance. How can that go back and forth? And I think that's the small business support for the town working in that, but it's just making sure that those barriers are identified and we've signaled to people that this is what we want to see and you're welcome.
Because I remember when the town was very vibrant back in the 60s and early 70s. You know, we all had a lot of businesses in it. You know, you didn't have the vacancies and people shopped there.
No.
Right, no such thing as Amazon back then.
Are there any other comments, questions, comments before we end? We haven't really talked about, oh, I'm so okay, Mr. Ellis.
So I just got, because I still really don't see, maybe you get some advice, you know, maybe from the state in terms of, you know, how to develop this, but every single town is gonna go now scrambling and for their application to get the same money that you guys are looking for. So what good does it do if a state website is advertising all the communities that have an art district if every single town, 169 towns, have an art district? It's still useless. So in my opinion, I think it's disingenuous to say you're not going after the money. It's about the money.
Not entirely.
Well, folks, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your perspectives. We've had a great conversation. Again, we didn't anticipate this many folks coming out and being a part of this. So give yourselves a big round of applause for just coming out. We appreciate it.
We do, one thing that I think the next time we get together, we'll talk about this, but we do want to, we want to keep people informed as to how this process is moving. And hopefully we can schedule another informational meeting and have you folks come back and bring your friends, bring other folks. And if you have questions, a lot of people use social media and there's a lot that's hand wringing and things decided over social media, but please feel free to reach out to any of us. If you have questions, if we don't have the answers, we'll try to find them and we'll get back to you. We want to hear what you have to say and we want to provide transparency and honest, open responses to any
Yep.
concerns.
And I'll add to that, most of you now have my phone number and my email address as well, the letters I sent out. So again, with the